I've noticed that these kind of outlier individuals tend to have a lot of demons. Elon Musk, for example, a lot of people close to him say he goes into this thing called demon mode, where something switches and he just goes really dark. A few minutes later, he's the complete opposite and he's goofing around. And you said if there hadn't been a Patti Smith-like character, I think the book would have been very difficult to write. He really would have appeared to be a total monster. Why was her inclusion of the book so important? And why do you think he would have been seen as a monster without that inclusion of her?
I think she humanized him, and I think that she had a lot of major issues herself. She had to give up a child when she was very young. She had a lot of episodes where she would hallucinate, fall apart. There seemed to have been, but they found each other and they completed each other in a way. And he was very much in love with her. And I think she with him to a certain extent. And when she comes back into his life, it's very touching. He was very hurt that she disappeared on him. He told me he was very hurt, but he would never really say. He'd complain about her husband, Fred Sonic Smith, who was a guitarist with the MC5, but he really was very careful about what he'd say about Patti and was very happy to see her in the end.
Do you think he had that kind of demon mode where he would switch on people? Because you described
Oh,
him as a monster.
if you're doing the amount of drugs that he did, there was something incredibly manic about going out, picking up men, bringing them back to the apartment. If something didn't work out, he would run out and bring another man. There was such a extreme sexual appetite that he had that never seemed to be completed in the photographs, but not for himself, really. If you take his other relationships, Patti had a lot of her own mental demons. Lisa Lyon, the bodybuilder who he did the book Lady, had numerous breakdowns, numerous. Milton Moore, who was man in polyester suit, was schizophrenic. He was drawn to those people.
Is that not opposites attract, similar people attract? Was he like that? And was it also maybe, I remember you saying that Andy Warhol, a similar kind of approach with his Chelsea Girls movie, and maybe did Mapplethorpe potentially emulate that from Warhol and copy that? Or do you think it was just a natural?
I think it was more natural. I do. I just think the attraction to him towards the Catholic Church, he loved the symmetry, he loved the ritual, and he also loved the good and the bad, the contrast. And you see the self-portraits where he definitely, the one with the whip up his ass is looks like the devil. So he liked playing with that imagery, and he could be vicious with people, or he could be charming in his very low-key way. But there was no doubt that both he and then Patti wanted to be successful, and it was success at any cost, really.
When did that belief of wanting to be successful begin for him? Was there a set point or a certain age where he decided, I want to be a famous artist slash
I think
photographer?
once he came to New York, they got into the Chelsea Hotel. He knew that Warhol would be often hanging out. They would try to infiltrate that. They wanted to be famous artists. So that was key to them. It's finding a patron. And that was very important to Robert. You get a patron and he will pay for you. And he did, two multiple ones.
Yeah. You mentioned Warhol. I know that Robert wanted to befriend him. What was his impression of Warhol once he did end up getting a bit close with him or befriending?
Warhol had really no interest in Mapplethorpe whatsoever. Mapplethorpe did a portrait of Warhol, but I think it was clear Mapplethorpe was never going to be part of that inner circle. So I think he was delusioned pretty quickly.
You did about 300 interviews over 6 years for the Mapplethorpe book. Can you tell us how you gathered all that information and turned it into one story? What was the process like for that?
Besides long, I think you are doing it with a biography. It's going to be chronological. You're putting the interviews together. There's the Floral Park interviews, which was his early life. There's the Chelsea interviews. He had very distinct periods, not like Picasso's blue period, but it was his childhood. Chelsea, the young artist in New York. You then had the S&M period, which was a definite period. Yes, Robert did his flowers. Robert slowly started to do the portraits, but there was that. And then he switched, and he could turn on a dime. He then realized that he was attracted to Black men, and all other men did not exist for him. So he went through that period. After that, it was when he had AIDS period of his life. I would do the interviews, and then I knew what I needed. Of course, certain people would crop up throughout all various periods, but that's basically the way I did it.